Well, hello there. How are you? I'm James Jack, and welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills. This is the Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate edition of Skills to Pay the Bills. And today we're going to talk about not just houses in general, but more or less the people who come together to make sure that you can either sell your house or you're going to be buying a house. I know, it's very complicated, isn't it? Well, we're going to make matters very simple. One of the things I want to point out is this, that in my profession as a real estate professional, I'm not here to judge what someone else does. I'm just here to tell you how I would do it either better or as best I can. And if I do it as best I can, then I'm sure that my clients will be very happy, and the people who I work with will be very happy too. You're wondering what this is? Well, this is a lead-in to a little story, a true story. This is a C flute. It's very simple. But when you're learning how to play a musical instrument, such as the one that I learned how to play when I was in the 7th grade, just a few years ago, you will understand why something this simple can really make a difference when you learn how to do it right. I'll never forget going to my father and saying to him, "Daddy, I want to learn how to play the clarinet." And he says, "Well, what is a clarinet?" I know you think that that's rather hard to imagine, but trust me, he did not know what a clarinet was. If I had said, "I want to play the drums," he probably would have said, "I don't want you coming into this house making all that noise." So he went and talked to my band director, and the band director showed him the clarinet, and my father looked at it, and of course he wanted to know how much it cost, and when he found out that it was fairly reasonable, he said, "Okay." But I remember him telling me, "I don't know why you want to play that thing. You can't make money with it. All you have to do is just go to school. When you graduate, I can get you a job at the plant." I told him I didn't want to work at the plant, even though the plant paid very well as far as wages go. He says, "Why not?" I says, "Because I'm not into dirty hands. I don't want my hands to be dirty. I want to use my hands to do other things, to create." So he said that was foolishness. But he didn't stop me from playing the clarinet. And he never listened to me. He never came to a concert or anything. And if he did, he probably would have fallen asleep because the music that we played was just really not the kind of music that he would listen to. When I first started, they put me on the back row. The rows are divided into first, second, and third sections. I sat in the third section. I was barely as big as the clarinet myself, but I was very proud of it, and I learned how to play it, starting with the very first rudiments, one note at a time, and then progressions and progressions. And all the while, as the years went by, from 7th to 8th to 9th grade, I kept my eye on the first section, because that's where I wanted to be. The better players and the best players were there. When I moved to the second section, I could look back at the third row clarinet players and say to myself, well, you got to be here to be better than me. In a couple of years, I was not only sitting on the front row, but I sat on the corner seat, the first seat. This, of course, is analogous to the first chair violinist, the closest to the maestro. I had it in my heart to be there, and I got there. I was a first chair solo clarinetist. In my mind, I was the best. And then, of course, in the minds of the others who thought they were the best, we were in a little unique club. There were only a few of us, but we respected each other's ability. One of the songs that our high school band played, just about every time there was an occasion, especially for football games, for graduations, whenever a special guest came to speak to us in an assembly, was the Star-Spangled Banner. First chair clarinet players played the melody, as the violinists would. No, we didn't have violins. One day I'll tell you why. But we did have clarinet players, and we did have saxophonists and other things. But our school, we didn't get that benefit. But I digress. The Star Spangled Banner is a very simple tune. Dum, 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 dum. And of course, it was set to music, the poem, a while back. And since then, it has gone through many, many, many changes among the general public. But for certain groups, it has stayed the same. Why? Because it is a very simple tune. Just like this is a very simple musical instrument, and it needs no improvement, no embellishments. Well, I bring this point to mind. A few months ago, no, I should say a couple of years ago, I was watching a football game, getting ready to watch the football game. And the U.S. Marine Band marched on to the field along with the color guard and the flags and everything. And I watched. And soon they began to play the Star Spangled Banner. Drum roll, cymbal clashes, everything. It was beautiful. Why? Because they played it as it was written and as it was intended to be played. They did not vary from that at all. They never will. Trust me. None of the military bands will ever change. As the jets flew over and the hair was rising on my skin, goose pimples and everything, because this is just great to me, I was compelled to call my band director, who is way up in age. And after the game, I called him and I told him, "Thank you for teaching me how to play the Star Spangled Banner." A couple of months ago, Serena Williams, won the French Open, and she beat Sharapova. Well, that's not news. But what was news was that the French band there in the stadium, Roland Garros, played the Star Spangled Banner, and they played it as it's supposed to be played, just like the Marine Band played it, or just like the British Orchestra, the British Symphonic Orchestra played it during the Olympics last year or a couple of years ago. Why did they play it that way? Because, one, if you are a professional, you do things as you were taught to do them without changing them. Why? Because it's as close to perfection as you can get. When it comes to buying a home or selling a home, you want the very best people working with you. I like to think that out of all the people that I've worked with, I should say Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate has worked with in the Washington metropolitan area, most of them think of us as being very professional because we play by the book. We don't vary. We explain things to them. We ask questions from the moment that they tell us that they want to buy a house or they want to sell their house or they want to rent their house or whatever. Remember in the last show, if you were there, we talked about driving up to the house. We see the sign and it says, "Honey, stop the car," and we think, oh, this is going to be a great, great opportunity to see a really nice house. And of course, from the curb, we're looking at the house and it has pretty nice curb appeal. So we know what the house is selling for because most of the other houses in that area should be selling for about that price. The lawn looks pretty good. There may be one or two patches of grass not, as green or where there is no grass because of the weather and everything. These things we tend to overlook. But I'm always surprised at how people are surprised also when they see me take out a pair of binoculars and I'm looking up and they say, "What are you doing?" And I say, "I'm looking at the roof because that's where it starts." They say, "What are you looking for?" Well, I'm looking for what the weather has done to either damage the roof or what the owner has not done to repair the roof, or if all things considered, the roof is in great shape. I'm not a roofer, so I always tell them we're going to have a roofer to take a look at this and determine whether or not we will have to bear any more expense. Remember I told you we get out of the car and we start walking around. We can do that because the house is for sale. I pull out the documents and I show the prospective buyer that the house is listed as is. If I listed the house, the seller and I have had a conversation about as is. That's pretty close to that expression that I used early on about the Star Spangled Banner, where I said it's played as it should be, as it was written, as is. Well, trust me, it's not the same. It's sort of like you go to the grocery store and you pull up, or you reach for an item on the counter, on the shelf, and it says, all natural. Sometimes it's closer to being all natural than what we expect, but many times it's not as all natural as you think it is. So we have to do our homework. And that's why we're here at the house, and we're actually looking at the house. And even though representing the buyer, it says as is, and I've explained to the buyer, as is means that if you should make an offer on the property, you will either accept the house or the property as it is, the present condition that it is in, or we will kind of, play around with the wording of as is and say we want some changes to be made or we want some repairs to be made. And people say, we can't do that because it says as is. I said, well, if we take it literally, or if we play it as the Star Spangled Banner is played, then yes, and that might mean that you may have to repair the roof. So they sit and they ask, well, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to take a good look at this house. Why? If it's as is, that means that I may have to pay a lot for repairs. That's what they say. Or the seller says, well, I'm not going to spend all this money to have these repairs done. Why? Why should I? Let them buy it as is. And so I say to them, because I am a professional, I want to explore the options with both you, the buyer, if I'm representing you, and the seller, you, the seller, of course, if I'm representing you. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of those as-is options. I think you're going to enjoy what you're going to hear.
Sure, my neighbors Jean and Louise, they may be superheroes with superpowers, but that doesn't make them so super at saving energy and money.
Honey?
I may not be able to harness the power of the elements, but I save significant cash and help the environment with appliances, electronics, and windows featuring the Energy Star label. So discover your own energy-saving superpowers. Go to ase.org/consumers.
Mom, Dad's making fondue again.
Hi, and welcome back to the second half of Skills to Pay the Bills, the Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate episode involving as-is conditions for properties. Just a refresher, in case you just joined us, why am I holding this little musical instrument? Can I play it? Yes, I can. I was taught to play it, and to play it right, and I was very good at it too. And then every once in a while, I'll pick it up and do a couple of them. Am I going to do it now? I don't think so. Trust me, I can. As is in a clause in a real estate transaction or contract, it generally means you will take it or leave it based on what the seller is saying. Or it means, well, can you at least make some repairs or give me some type of allowance for it? Well, if you're talking to the seller themselves directly, there's a possibility that they can. But if this is a foreclosure and you're dealing with HUD or FHA or the Veterans Administration or Freddie Mac or any of these others, well, you'd better come fully prepared, either to know exactly what they will allow or to be prepared to hear them say no. That means you've got to know what the market value of the property is going to be. Otherwise, if you're going to take that walk with a real estate professional who knows what they're doing And when they tell you exactly what it's going to cost, when you're sitting at the settlement table, then it's advisable to ask these questions first, because I expect you to ask me them, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you what I expect is going to happen in an as-is transaction. Why as-is? There are a lot of properties on the market that are foreclosures, abandoned, or whatever the case may be, or where the owner is slightly underwater and they want to be able to get as much out of the property as they possibly can. The reason why it has that as-is clause in there is because the seller doesn't know who the next person is going to be that will make an offer, and the buyer doesn't know what the seller's real reason for pricing the property as is. The house that you probably will be looking at while you and I have this discussion looks pretty good, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It's a nice house. I know this house very well. It's a very large house. It doesn't really matter whether it's a large or small house, because small houses can have lots of problems and big houses can have fewer problems. It doesn't really matter. But let's start, as we did in the last show, looking at the roof for shingles that need to be replaced, or looking for other extensions from the roof, venting pipes and things like that where the flashing needs to be replaced. And we work our way down to the gutters, and we're looking at the gutters, and of course you're sitting there and you're saying, what is he looking at when he's looking into the gutters? I'm looking for leaves, and I'm looking for twigs and things like that that can cause moisture to jam up or dam up inside the gutters and make their way into the eaves, the soffits, and the fascia. What's the eaves and the soffit and the fascia? That's that little wooden trim around the house right below the roof. Why am I looking at that? Because if I can see where the wood is rotted, so can the sparrows. Sparrows love to live inside your house, and they can crawl into the tiniest little spots. And not only when they get in there, they can set up shop and make little sparrows. And late at night, you'll hear cheep, 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 and you're wondering, what is that noise? Those are the babies. They're telling mommy and daddy, go out and get us some food. And when mommy and daddy fly out and come back in, they bring with them other little neighbors who move in with them, and they form little colonies in the roof and make their way into the house or the rooms. These are bugs. Bugs carry germs. It's not the sparrow's fault. It's just that the sparrows gave the bugs a free ride inside your house. And they come in through those little cracks. Ants come in too. Why? Well, you've left the door open for them. So that's what I'm looking at. In the eaves, the soffits, and the fascia. Not only am I looking, but one of the professionals that you will meet, a home inspector, is looking at the same thing. And so is the appraiser. The home inspector and the appraiser. Well, how many other people are going to be looking at this house? Well, carpenters who will have to do the work. Who else will be looking at the house? Of course, you're going to be taking another good look at the house because you've got to determine how much it's going to cost. What else are people going to be looking at? Well, there are people who are going to be looking at documents. How many people are we talking about? Well, in a transaction involving the sale or purchase of a house, as many as 50 to 60 people. Lenders, processors, lots of people. It passes through that many hands in most cases, and that's why it takes 30 to 60 days to get you to the settlement table. So let's make our way out of the roof and into the house from the outside. We're not going inside this time. We're looking at the outside. We left you at the downspouts and the gutters, and we're looking at the trim all the way down. We see wood rot. Well, the birds didn't do that. Termites did it. So someone's going to have to come in and fix it, and also apply some type of prevention for termites. We walk around the house, as we talked about before, and the window well, it's filled with debris and grass and all kinds of other stuff. lots of things collected in there. Some animals and some vegetables. And they all do what they do best in the window wells. And they make sure that lots of moisture get into the house as well as other critters too. So we're counting the window wells, we're counting the windows, we're counting the doors, we're counting everything, and we're saying to ourselves, how much is this house going to cost us to do all the repairs? We don't know yet. We're going to get the estimates. But you only have in mind how much money you're going to be paying for the house, or how many repairs you're going to make for the house if you're putting the house on the market. Who are you relying on to make sure that you don't get hosed? You're relying on me. I'm not the expert in all these areas, but if I've had a lot of experience, and most people who I've dealt with say, as references, he does a pretty good job, then you can feel confident that I'm going to represent you as such. Why? Because if I do a good job, you're going to tell everybody else. If I do a bad job, you're going to tell everybody else, and they are going to tell everybody else, and pretty soon I'll be packing my bags and heading in another direction, setting up shop somewhere where they don't know me, so I can just start my own little incompetence charade again. But instead, as a professional, and as all professionals in the real estate industry should be, I want to provide you with the best possible service. Not because I just want to get paid, but because I like playing the tune as it was written, and it should be played because that's what I want to do. In turn, you benefit from me and other professionals in the business, whether they be salespersons, loan officers, technicians, repair people, any of these people. Because they're doing a very good job for you, you can rest assured that you're getting a good deal regardless of which side of the settlement table you're sitting on. That's what real estate is really all about. It really is. Sure, you're going to be thinking about the furniture, and you're going to be thinking about the azaleas, and you're going to be thinking about that new car that you're going to be parking in your driveway, and you're going to say, wow, I really love this. I've got space for 2 cars, and it's clean. The concrete is not cracked. See that crack? Look at that crack. If you had paid more attention to that crack in the driveway, you would have thought to yourself, whoa, how much is it going to cost for me to put another driveway in? But I saw the crack, I told you about it, and I told you what it's probably going to cost based on what one of my friends or another associate and the appraiser is going to say, this is what it's going to cost, and you already know before you go to settlement or before you actually negotiate the contract that you're willing to pay for the concrete to be fixed or replaced because you accepted it as is. Doesn't mean that you have to bear the full brunt of the cost, because as is could also mean that the seller is willing to give you a break, lower the price, and give you an allowance for fixing these little things. Or the seller probably played clarinet too in the high school band and decided that before I even put the house on the market, where it's going to sit for 260 days because nobody wants to buy it, I put it on the market as is. The seller is going to say, if I were buying that house, this is what I expect, and no less should I expect from them to say to me, why don't you fix this if you expect to get full price? Fortunately, the seller learned how to play the Star-Spangled Banner as it was written, and he carried with him that feeling of, I have to do my very best because that's what's expected of me as a professional. If I were a surgeon, same thing. If I were a writer, same thing. If I were on stage and you paid $125 to come in and see me perform, I'm going to give you $125 plus as far as my performance is concerned, because I want you to feel very good about your relationship with me. In a nutshell, the sales of real estate, I should say, the purchase of real estate, is an art. And when people do it right, it's something that other people want to either do and carry on that tradition, or they want to see it done right. And there's nothing like going into the museum and seeing a really nice piece, a Van Gogh, a Rembrandt, or whatever, and saying to yourself, wow, that's priceless. And that's the feeling you get when you do something for someone and they really appreciate what you've done, regardless of what you do. Oh, speaking of what you're doing, I hope you have a really wonderful afternoon, night, morning, or whatever. And I hope that you enjoy doing what you do, because that's what you like to do. I'm James Jack, and I like doing what I do. And I'll be back again here on Skills to Pay the Bills with the Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate Edition. Until then, keep on playing.